My name is Isabel Colton. I am 68 years old, recently widowed, and I never imagined that the quiet life I knew would split open the way it did. 6 months after I buried my husband, I learned that love can leave behind more than memories. Sometimes it leaves mysteries, and sometimes those mysteries lead you further than you ever thought you would go. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon at precisely 3:17. I remember the time because I was watering the roses outside my porch when the doorbell rang. The sound startled me. For months, my home had been silent, painfully silent, the kind of silence that happens after losing someone you spent 4 decades beside. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door, expecting a neighbor or a package. Instead, a man stood there in a charcoal suit, polished shoes, and a leather briefcase gripped as if something fragile or dangerous lived inside it. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Colton," he said. "My name is Alexander Reed. I represent your late husband." The words hit me like cold water. A lawyer, connected to Thomas, after 6 months. Why? I invited him inside. We sat in the living room where Thomas and I once read books in the evenings, where he fell asleep in his chair more times than he admitted. Reed placed a sealed envelope on the coffee table. Next to it, a golden key rested on dark velvet. Heavy, ancient-looking, etched with patterns I had never seen. "Your husband instructed me to give you this today. Only today. Only at 6 months, not a day sooner." My breath felt too tight to hold. A message from the man I loved. A key to something unknown. And that was the moment everything I knew about my life began to shift. I stared at the key for a long time before I found the courage to open the envelope. My hands trembled the way they did on our wedding day. 40 years ago when I promised Thomas forever, without knowing what forever truly meant. The wax seal cracked, and there, in his handwriting I knew better than my own, was my name. "My dearest Isabel. If you are reading this, it means you kept your promise to me for 40 years. You stood beside me until the end, even when life was heavy, even when love required patience. You once told me that if you could tolerate my stubbornness for 4 decades, you deserved a gift beyond imagination. Well, love, you did, and now it is time." I pressed my hand to my mouth as tears blurred the words. I remembered exactly when he said that. We were young, drinking cheap wine on the apartment floor, laughing about how we would survive marriage. He made it sound like a joke, one I never expected him to remember. Yet here it was, carefully written, carefully preserved. The letter continued. "You will travel to Scotland, alone. Do not speak of this to anyone, including Asher. You must go by yourself. Take the key. The place you seek will be waiting, and when you arrive, everything will make sense. I wanted to be the one to take your hand and walk you there, but if I am gone, promise me still that you will go. There is something for you, something only you." He signed it with love, not goodbye, just love. I sat there a long time, the room quiet, except for the ticking clock on the mantel and the soft ache in my chest. He had planned something for me, something large enough to hide behind time and secrecy. But one line refused to leave my mind. "Do not tell Asher. Why keep our only son out of this? Why leave me instructions instead of explanations?" The envelope felt heavier than it should, as though it carried more than paper. It carried direction. It carried destiny. And I knew from that moment that I would follow where he pointed, even if it led me across the world. The next morning, I booked a flight to Scotland without telling a single soul. The decision felt reckless at my age, but there was a strange calm beneath the fear, like stepping into a dark room where you somehow know a light waits on the other side. Thomas had asked me to go alone. I did not understand why, but love had taught me trust even when answers were missing. The airport felt like another universe. Families laughing, businessmen rushing, children crying into their mothers' shoulders. And there I was, a 68-year-old widow, holding a golden key in her purse, as if it were a compass only I could see. 8 hours on the plane gave me too much time to think. What could be waiting? A house? A box? A memory buried for decades? Every answer felt too small. When I landed in Edinburgh, my phone buzzed with missed calls from Asher, 8 of them. Then a message. "Mom, where are you? Why did you leave without saying anything?" His concern warmed me and pained me at the same time. I typed slowly. "I just need a little time to be with myself. I am safe." I left out the rest because I did not know how to explain something I could barely grasp. I rented a car and the clerk looked surprised when I asked for directions into the highlands. The road stretched long and narrow, winding through hills like green waves rising and falling under the sky. Sheep grazed on distant slopes. A river ran silver beside me. Each mile pulled me deeper away from the life I knew. The further I drove, the less civilization seemed to exist, just mountains, wind, and the hum of possibility. It felt like stepping into a story older than language, where myths might breathe and secrets might walk. I checked my rearview mirror more than once, half expecting reality to chase me back home, but the road only carried me forward, and somewhere in that vast quiet, a thought surfaced that I could not push away. Whatever Thomas left for me, it was never meant to be ordinary. 3 hours into the highlands, the road narrowed until it became a ribbon of stone between towering cliffs and endless moorland. Mist hung low, soft as breath against the windshield. Then, as the road curved left, I saw it. Ravenmoor Castle. It rose out of the landscape like time itself had shaped it. Gray stone walls weathered by centuries. 4 round towers crowned with battlements, ivy climbing like veins of history across its surface. It did not look abandoned or fragile. It looked awake, waiting. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Thomas sent me here. I parked near the front steps, my heart pounding as if it wanted to escape my chest before I did. The key felt hot inside my pocket, as though it knew it had reached its door. I climbed the stone steps, each one heavier than the last. The massive wooden doors were carved with swirling patterns almost identical to those etched into the key. "It cannot be," I whispered, but I pressed the key into the lock anyway. It slid in smoothly, too smoothly, as if it had been turned 1,000 times before, though I knew no one living had touched it. The doors opened without sound. Inside was not darkness but light. Chandeliers glowed like captured constellations. A crimson runner led down a vast entry hall lined with tapestries and portraits in gilded frames. My breath left me in pieces. This was no forgotten ruin. This was a home. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Colton." I spun around. A man stood beneath the archway, early 70s perhaps, dressed in formal black with white gloves. Posture straight, expression composed. "My name is Alden. I am the keeper of Ravenmoor Castle." He bowed slightly. "We have been expecting you for 17 years. I could not speak. My voice, my logic, everything I knew about reality vanished in that moment. All I could do was stand there, surrounded by a secret my husband built brick by brick. Alden gestured gently. "Please, there is more you must see." Alden led me through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The floors were polished marble, reflecting soft golden light. Portraits lined the walls, not stern kings or royals but landscapes, ships and faces I did not recognize. It was too much to take in. I felt like I had stepped out of my own life and into someone else's. We stopped before a study filled with books that smelled faintly of leather and dust. A fireplace crackled low even though no one had been here when I arrived, or so I thought. On the desk waited a second envelope, my name again, in Thomas's handwriting. Alden gestured, then quietly stepped away. My fingers hesitated, but eventually they broke the seal. "My beloved Isabel. If you are reading this within these walls, then you have followed where I hoped you would go. You must have felt it the moment you stepped inside. This place is yours. Ravenmoor Castle belongs to you. I bought it 17 years ago to prepare for a future I feared I might not live long enough to see." I sat down, sinking into the chair as if my bones gave out. "Bought it? 17 years ago? How?" The next lines answered the question before I could think it. 25 years ago, while working in Scotland, I discovered something I never spoke of. Hidden deep in the highlands was a sealed cavern. Inside was a treasure long lost to history. Gold, jewels, artifacts from a royal lineage forgotten by most of the world. I documented everything. I secured legal ownership quietly and used the resources to rebuild this castle, piece by piece, year by year, so that one day it would be ready for you. I read those sentences again and again. My husband, my historian husband, the man who joked about retirement funds and drove a car older than our son. He found treasure, real treasure, 500 million in forgotten wealth. I could not breathe. And yet he never told me. The final paragraph felt like a hand on my heart. "You deserve something magnificent, something no one could take from you, not even time, not even grief. If I am gone, let this place remind you that you were my greatest treasure, Isabel." The ink blurred with tears, my tears. He had built a kingdom for me in silence, and I had just begun to understand its size. Alden returned when my breathing finally steadied, as if he knew precisely how long grief and wonder needed to settle inside a person. He did not speak, only offered his hand with quiet certainty. "There is something more you must see, Mrs. Colton." We descended a staircase built of ancient stone, the air cooling as we moved deeper underground. The walls tightened, passageways narrowing until we reached a door reinforced with iron. Alden unlocked it with a smaller key he kept close to his chest. For a moment darkness waited like held breath. Then the lights bloomed. Gold filled the room like liquid sunlight, coins in towering glass columns, ruby-embedded crowns, silver chalices older than my country, swords and scepters slept behind crystal panels. Paintings, tapestries, manuscripts lay preserved like history suspended in amber. I took one unsteady step forward, my reflection glittering across polished surfaces. My voice was barely sound. "Thomas found this." Alden nodded gently. He recovered the entire vault and catalogued each artifact. He hired historians and restorers under confidentiality contracts. Every record, every receipt, every legal claim was crafted to ensure this collection would remain yours alone. I pressed my fingers to the glass of a crown. Jewels caught the lights like captured suns. In that reflection, I saw myself not as a widow or an aging woman, but as someone Thomas had chosen to honor beyond death. He believed I was worthy of a kingdom. "Why me?" I whispered. Alden answered with the ease of someone who had waited years to speak truth. "Because he loved you in a way most men only speak of but never prove. Some leave flowers. He left a legacy." I stood there for what felt like hours, touching history with my eyes, holding grief and gratitude in equal measure. It was overwhelming, humbling, terrifying, beautiful. This was my inheritance, my responsibility, my future. But even in all that magnificence, one thought followed me like a shadow. How could I tell Asher? And should I? For 3 days I lived in a surreal blend of awe and disbelief. I walked the gardens at sunrise, studied royal manuscripts in the afternoons, and stood in the vault at night, as if I needed proof it was real. Ravenmore Castle was silent but not lonely. It felt like Thomas whispered through every stone. On the 4th morning, solitude ended. Alden approached me in the breakfast room, hands folded neatly. "Mrs. Colton, you have a visitor. A young man. He says his name is Asher." My heart dropped, heavy as the crown in the vault. Asher was my only child, bright and ambitious. He had been calling and texting for days, growing increasingly anxious about where I was. I never lied to him before, yet here I was, holding a castle behind my silence. I stepped into the entry hall just as he walked through the doors, his eyes wide, his mouth parted. He looked like a child again, seeing fireworks for the first time. But the boyhood wonder did not last. It shifted, calculated, assessed. "Mom," he breathed, "what is this place?" I tried to smile, but emotion tangled in my throat. "Your father left it for me. For us in a way, but mostly for me." He walked slow, turning in a circle, taking in marble pillars, chandeliers, tapestries. The amazement lasted only a moment before curiosity sharpened into intent. "How much is all this worth, Mom?" "You need advisors, legal support, a team to manage everything. We should talk about inheritance structures, long-term planning, tax strategy." I blinked. Strategy, advisors, inheritance. Not one word about Thomas, not one question about how I felt. He looked at me as though I were holding a portfolio, not the last gift of a man I loved for 40 years. I steadied myself against the railing. "Asher, sit. There is more to show you." He followed, but his gaze lingered on artifacts like numbers already printed over them. When I opened the vault doors, light shimmered across his face. "Oh my God," he said. "This is fortune-level wealth. Mom, you cannot handle this alone." Handle, as if love was a business, as if legacy was percentage and profit. My son stood before $500 million, eyes shining. But they did not shine for history. They shone for ownership. Alden gave us space, though the silence he left behind felt louder than any argument. Asher walked from case to case, photographing crowns and swords, zooming in on each jewel as if proof was needed before value could exist. His excitement grew like a fever. "Do you realize what this could fund?" he said. "Investments, foundations, even global expansion. We could hire appraisers, legal teams, auction houses. We could move part of this into circulation and triple its worth. We. The word struck harder than any blow. Asher, I said slowly, this is not a business venture. This is your father's life work, his legacy, something sacred. He barely paused. Legacy is wonderful, Mom, but wealth this size needs structure. You are one person. I can help you manage it, maybe even secure it for future generations. I felt my pulse steady but heavy. You mean secure it for yourself? He froze, jaw tightening. That is not fair. Instant my voice was quiet, but it did not shake. You walked in here and the first thing you saw was profit. Not your father's love, not the decades he spent building this. You saw money. He exhaled sharply, offended. I am being practical. Someone has to think beyond sentiment. I turned to face him fully. Your father asked me to keep this secret, even from you. He feared what wealth could do to a family. He stared at me like he did not recognize the woman in front of him. Perhaps I did not either. Perhaps wealth reshaped more than finances. It revealed truth. Mom, he said, let me take over the management. Let me plan. You are not equipped to run something this massive. I felt something inside me go still. A door closing, not loudly, but irrevocably. Asher, I said, I did not ask for your guidance. I did not ask for control to be shared. And I will not. His eyes darkened with something I did not want to name. For the first time, my son looked less like family and more like a stakeholder disappointed by a decision. Some inherit love. Some inherit greed. And sometimes they are the same person. Asher left Scotland 2 days later, not with anger, but with calculation, as if given time he could return with a better argument. He hugged me before he went, but it was brief, distracted. His mind was already elsewhere, running numbers and scenarios I never asked for. After his departure, Ravenmore Castle felt different, but not empty. The silence no longer echoed loss. It held space for understanding, for healing, for becoming someone I had never allowed myself to be. 6 months passed like turning pages. I learned every corridor of the castle, every shadow the afternoon light carved across stone. I spent mornings in the library translating documents older than my name, afternoons walking the grounds while wind combed the grass flat like a sleeping sea. Evenings were spent at the vault, absorbing history the way others breathe. I founded the Colton Heritage Foundation to preserve the artifacts and open supervised study for scholars. I invited researchers from around the world to witness the collection, to treat history as something alive rather than forgotten. They called me remarkable, brave, but I just called it honoring Thomas. I hosted dinners with curators, walked with archaeologists through Highland fields, donated to restoration projects that gave voice to centuries of silence. I carved purpose from grief, brick by brick as my husband had carved a kingdom from secrecy. Sometimes Asher called, but instead of asking about me he asked about assets, visitor growth, future funding. His tone was polite but distant, like speaking to opportunity rather than blood. Still I wished him well, loved him even, but I loved myself too, for the first time. Ravenmore did not make me wealthy, it made me whole. I sit now in the west tower of Ravenmore, watching the highlands fade into evening gold. The wind moves through the valley like memory, warm and gentle and restless all at once. Sometimes I imagine Thomas standing beside me, hands folded behind his back, smiling like he knows I figured it out, like he always knew I would. People say grief breaks us, but sometimes it breaks the shell so we can finally step into the life we were meant to carry. Thomas left me a castle built from devotion and quiet planning, but the real inheritance was the woman I became inside it. Strong, capable, undivided. Asher visits occasionally. He brings spreadsheets, proposals, plans for expansion. I offer him tea instead. We speak as mother and son, not business partners. And though distance exists, love does too. A different kind of love now, one with boundaries. I tell him often that wealth reveals character. It does not create greed, it exposes it. It does not build integrity, it tests it. And while he may one day understand, the castle no longer waits for his approval. It stands because Thomas believed in me long before I knew how to believe in myself. Some women inherit diamonds. Some inherit loneliness. I inherited both, and still I am grateful. If you are listening, take this with you. Love deeply, but love yourself enough to stand alone if you must. Protect what is sacred. Trust your intuition. And never let others decide the value of your life, your work, or your worth. If this story touched you, let me know. Share it. Leave a comment, like this moment so it lives a little longer in memory. Maybe you too are sitting on treasure you have not yet unlocked.